이번 시간에 이제 소개할 거는요, AI와 또 이제 블록체인 간의 또 결합이 있다 해가지고 저희가 제로지 CEO분을 모셨습니다. 자기소개 부탁드리겠습니다.
I'm Michael. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Zero G Labs, and I'm also the executive chair of our digital asset treasury called Zero Stack. My personal background, I started in technology at Microsoft and SAP Labs, where I was an engineer and technical product manager. Then I moved over to the business side. I worked for Bain & Company as well as Bridgewater Associates. After that, I went back to graduate school at Stanford. I started my first Y Combinator-backed unicorn company called Garten. Eventually, I sold that and then started Zero G. And I also went to UC Berkeley and Harvard as well, in addition to Stanford.
그 제로지가 AI 독점 문제를 해결하기 위해서 만들어졌다라고 들었는데 그러면은 AI 독점이 이제 어떤 문제를 일으킬 수 있다 생각하시는지 궁금합니다.
Yeah, so the issue, and we don't just call it monopolization, we actually call it black box AI. Because the issue with black box AI is that you're trusting a company to align the interests of AI with what human beings need. And the issue is you can't verify what's under the hood. So you have things like where did the data come from, who labeled the data, what version of the model am I getting, what are the weights and biases of the model. And the issue is if you can't verify these things, if you then start having AI run more societal level things, so there's a spectrum, individual versus societal level. Let's say AI starts running an airport and something goes wrong. How do you then verify who made the mistake? Was it the company? Was it the AI that made the mistake? And so that creates a huge issue and a safety issue, where if you can't verify, you don't know that AI is effectively serving the needs of both either the company or human beings. And that's the problem that we're addressing.
그러면 제로지 프로젝트를 좀 소개해 주시면 좋겠습니다.
We signed one of the biggest deals ever with KBW. So we signed for 3 years because that's our commitment to Korea. We want to be here for the long term. And so we decided it made sense to be a main sponsor long term. But essentially what we're doing is we're building the key infrastructure to make AI transparent, verifiable, and then ultimately safe as well. And so you can think of us like a decentralized version of OpenAI that's actually truly open.
코인 프로젝트 보려면 이제 그 팀 구성원을 잘 봐야 되는데 이 제로지는 팀 구성원이 굉장히 훌륭한 분들이 많이 들었거든요. 어떤 분들이 있는지 좀 들어보고 싶습니다.
It really started with the co-founding team first and foremost. So my classmate from Stanford, Thomas, he called me up one day, late 2022, and basically said, 5 years ago, I invested in this company called Conflux. Ming and Fan are two of the best engineers that I've ever backed. Are you interested in meeting with them? And so we went through 6 months of co-founder dating, and I came to the same conclusion. Wow, Ming and Fan are the best engineers I've ever worked with. To give you a sense, Fan is a 2-time Olympic gold medalist in informatics. He has a computer science degree from MIT. And he's also a professor at the University of Toronto, and he had things like Distinguished Thesis Awards and Top Paper Awards together with Ming. Interestingly enough, Fan was actually an intern for Ming initially at Microsoft Research, and Ming spent 11 years at Microsoft Research, and he wrote some of the key papers on decentralized storage, decentralized compute, as well as writing some of the first AI algorithms for Microsoft Bing's search engine. And so it started with that core team, and then we hired many other amazing people, co-founder of Sonic, for example, people from Binance, people from Chainlink, like the head of BD from Chainlink, people from Avalanche, one of the top product managers. And recently we hired a person that used to be the CEO of the Avalanche Foundation, Aitush. So he joined our team as a chief growth officer. And so we also have people from the traditional backgrounds as well, like McKinsey and Bain and Bridgewater and Amazon as product managers. So we try to combine the best of Web 2 with the best of Web 3 as well.
그러면 이 프로젝트를 시작한 계기가 있을 거 아니에요? 좀 그 이야기 좀 들어볼 수 있을까요?
As I mentioned, it really started with the team first. And it was kind of an opportunity where I was like, wow, this is the best team I've ever worked with. We have to start something together. But then what we saw at the time was that ChatGPT 3 had its breakout moment. And we thought 5 to 10 years into the future, if AI is going to run major societal level systems for us, do we believe in this type of future where AI is controlled by a handful of companies? And we got very, very worried that this type of future will lead to AI eventually overrunning human beings and creating this type of Terminator-like situation. And we wanted to create a system that's opposite to that, that creates AI safety rather. And so we made it our mission to make AI a public good so that we can really deliver on the promise of AI, which is a world of abundance, a world of large rises of GDP increases and so on. And so that's why we really started the company fundamentally.
그러면 우리 CEO 분은 그 옛날 꿈이 뭐였었는지 좀 궁금하거든요.
I think when I was very little, I think I had a different type of spectrum. I think it started from wanting to be a train conductor all the way to being a scientist. So it was somewhere in between there. And then eventually I kind of followed a bit more in my father's footsteps. He was a technology executive.
Oh, okay.
And I really enjoyed watching him kind of building a company and really enjoying the technology that he was building. And so I was very inspired by that and
Yeah.
eventually knew I wanted to become an entrepreneur as well. So
Yeah.
I'm from Berlin, Germany originally. And then when I was 13, we moved to Silicon Valley. And then I was kind of bored in high school. And so I would just hang out at my father's workplace, which was SAP Labs in Palo Alto. And I was there maybe 13, 14. I was surfing the internet. And then one of the managers discovered me and he said, "Hey, why don't you do something useful?" And I'm like, "Oh, what should I do?" And he's like, "Why don't you learn how to program?" And I'm like, "I don't know how." And he's like, "I'll send you to a course, don't worry about it." And then a month later, I basically became the youngest programmer at SAP Labs. And so I got into technology very early as a result, and I just kind of stayed with it, and it was really a big passion of mine.
그러니까 이제 실리콘밸리도 살았던 경험이 있었기 때문에 AI와 이제 그 블록체인 이 두 가지를 다 하게 된 건데 그럼 어떻게 제로지를 통해서 AI 이제 훈련이라던가 출원 비용을 낮출 수 있다는 건지 원리를 좀 듣고 싶어요.
Yeah, so basically what we do is we don't rely on very large-scale data centers. And so what kind of black box AI companies do is they raise a ton of money, they then put all of this money into compute expenditures, they create a big data center, and then they train their models off of that. With decentralized AI, you can develop software and technology where regular users can actually utilize their hardware, like consumer GPUs, effectively to train models, to do inference, and so on. And so because it's a shared resource, the cost can drop by 80 to 90% as a result, because it's across a shared network of resources.
그래서 그 핵심 기술이 제로 그래비티라고 이제 하는데 그게 좀 어떤 건지 좀 상세하게 들어볼 수 있을까요?
So what we've built at Zero G is what we call a decentralized AI operating system. So very similar if you have a phone, like let's say a Samsung phone, and you have an operating system like Android on it. So we built that effectively for decentralized AI. And so there's a few components that are important to that. First, there's the layer one, which is ultra high performance layer one, because you need to have an execution environment to run applications on and smart contracts and so on. And so that's infinitely scalable. Then we built a storage network on top of that too, because you need to store AI models, you need to store memories. So that needs to be in a storage network. Then we have a compute network, because if you want to do things like inference and fine tuning and pre-training, then you need graphic cards effectively. And so we have a separate compute network. On top of that, we have something called the service marketplace, which is like our version of the App Store, because you need to, let's say if you want to have a specific data provider, they need to plug into that system. And then we have AI safety nodes on top of that, because you need some type of police force of the system. So if something goes wrong, how do you then address that? And so all of these components together make up the operating system. So it's a decentralized AI operating system.
그러면 이게 제로지가 레이어 1이란 얘기는 그럼 이제 다른 이제 프로젝트들이 레이어 2로 참가할 수 있게 가능성을 열어둔 게 아닌가 좀 여쭤볼 수 있을까요?
That's possible as well, yes. So for that, we have a special system called the data availability layer, and they can utilize that. That's something that's built on top of the storage system. And so they can plug in and become a layer 2 as well, yes.
그러면은 이 제로지가 지금 생각하는 이제 최종 목표가 뭔지 좀 궁금하거든요.
Our final goal, well, we have a mission of making AI a public good. And when that mission gets accomplished, everybody gets to enjoy abundance in their life. So there's this professor at UC Berkeley, for example, called Sir Stuart Russell. And he said that if AI's potential is met, then everybody gets to live a middle-class existence, which means that GDP can increase by 10x across the world. So imagine people not needing to work for a living anymore, but choosing what they can work towards. And so AI has that potential, and we want to see that potential realized.
그러면 단기적인 목표도 좀 궁금하거든요. 예를 들어 뭐 내년 목표는 무엇인지 좀 듣고 싶습니다. 예.
The short-term vision at the moment is, because we're a layer 1, we have to build different aspects to it. So first we have to build a liquidity layer, because part of the value proposition is to bring financial resources. And so there's a big DeFi ecosystem that's forming right now. So things like AMM DEX, perp DEX, money lending, borrowing. So all of that needs to be built as a liquidity layer. Then there's going to be an application layer for things that can only be built on zero-G. And so these would be things like truly owning your AI agent and then having AI agents that do useful work for you, useful economic work. And so we're focused on that. Then there is research and technology leadership. That's kind of the third layer. So for example, we published 5 research papers recently, and 4 of which of those are already in top AI conferences. So we're contributing to kind of the overall research in the space. For example, we were the first company in the world to train a 107 billion parameter model fully decentralized. People didn't think that was possible before. We took research by Google called DLOCO and then optimized it about 357 times to create something called DLOCO-X. And that then was able to train this 107 billion parameter model. So there's research leadership, and then finally there's decentralized governance as well. So progressively decentralizing over time. So those are the short-term goals.
그러면 이제 파트너를 좀 맺은 회사들이 어떤 것들이 있는지 듣고 싶습니다.
Yeah, I mean, we partner with some of the world's leading companies like Ali Cloud and Google and NTT Digital, for example, and then many native Web3 companies as well, like a Plume or Chainlink. And so it's a really great mix of top Web2 and Web3 companies.
제로지 토큰이 최근에 상장했는데 KBW 때였던 걸로 기억하는데 그러면 이게 프로젝트에서 제로지 토큰이 하는 역할이 무엇인지 궁금하거든요.
There are 3 aspects to the token, and the first one is security. So you can do things like staking and restaking and liquid staking, so that provides security to the network. 2 is governance. So if you want to participate in a voting process, you can utilize the token. And then finally is all the utilities. So you use the token to pay for storage, for compute, for the gas fees, for the marketplace. All of those aspects require a zero-G token. On the DeFi layer as well, the token will often be the base token. So for example, let's say you want to trade or own an AI agent, then you have to use zero-G token for that. And so those are the 3 aspects.
그러면은 그 제로지 토큰 가격을 뭐 유지하거나 상승하기 위해서 어떤 장치들이 있을까요?
So there's a couple mechanisms. One is not the token itself, but we started a digital asset treasury called ZeroStack on NASDAQ, which is a NASDAQ listed company. And the whole purpose of that company is to buy and hold more zero-G tokens to increase the number of zero-G per share. And so that in itself is a mechanism that basically propels and reduces available supply. Then there's mechanisms inherent in the token as well. So any of the applications that are building on zero-G chain, they tend to have a revenue share. That revenue share will then be used for a buyback and burn model effectively. And then of course there's also the token sinks, like if people are staking, and we've done many staking campaigns with different exchanges that we listed on. For example, with Binance, I think it was one of the biggest, if not the biggest staking campaign they've ever done. And so those are the types of things we look at as well from a kind of long-term perspective.
그러면 AI 생태계가 커질수록 제로지도 같이 성장할 수밖에 없는 구조가 되겠네요.
Well, there's a saying in the US that a rising tide floats all boats. So yes,
Yeah.
it should definitely be the case.
그러면은 5년 뒤에는 이제 제로지가 AI 산업에 어떤 기여를 할 것인지 좀 생각하시는지 궁금합니다.
So what we want to see within 5 years, first of all, the next year is all about catching up on the infrastructure side to traditional AI. And then after that is utilizing blockchain superpower. So in 5 years, as AI is coming into our homes in the form of robotics, then also using AI for managing things like airports and logistics systems, administrative systems, that all of those mission critical aspects are run on zero-G. For everything else, you can use kind of centralized AI companies because the critical nature of it is not as, for example, if you order a pizza with an AI agent, if somebody messes up your pizza, that's not a big deal. But if you're running an airport with AI and 2 planes crash into each other, that's a big deal. So we want all the mission critical aspects to be run on zero-G.
혹시 그럼 회사 본사가 좀 어디에 있는지 여쭤볼 수 있을까요?
So we're globally distributed. Our headquarters is in San Francisco, but we have people all over the place. Dubai, Singapore, Shanghai, Korea, and Seoul as well. So everywhere.
왜 여쭤봤냐면 저희는 이제 원래 계속 그 나스닥 상장사 때문에 실리콘밸리 되게 자주 가거든요. 그래서 한 내년쯤에 중간 체크하러 저희가 직접 한번 제로질 찾아가도 되는지.
Yes,
Can he
please
meet
come.
오케이. 네, 인터뷰 응해 너무 감사하고요. 그 마지막으로 혹시 하실 말씀 있으면 해주시면 감사하겠습니다.
I would just say that we're really deeply committed to Korea. I've been here every month, and we were joking this time around it's time for me to buy an apartment. So we have Korean team members. We're going to do consistent events in Korea. We have Korean investors like Samsung and Nouns Capital and Leica Ventures, and so on. Obviously, we're did one of the largest deals with KBW and are consistently going to be here. I'm going to be present all the time. So we really love our Korean community, and so definitely excited about being here and present. So, and follow me on X, of course, Michael H_0G.
이게 제로지에 대해서 소개를 했는데요. 또 여러분들이 한번 더 찾아보시면 재밌을 것 같고 이제 앞으로 어떻게 AI 발전과 같이 진행되고 있는지 여러분들도 주기적으로 확인해 보시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 제로지에 많은 관심 가져주시면 감사하겠습니다. 오늘 출연해 주셔서 너무 고맙습니다.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
감사합니다.
감사합니다.